Good evening, how y'all doing?
Good.
So we're here, and this is a continuation of a conversation that started many months ago. I don't know exactly when. I wasn't in town. In July? The very first one.
The one that we did?
Yeah, upstairs.
Oh, yeah, that was in July.
And so this is a continuation of that, and this is just a place where we can come together and figure out what actions we can do. So this is opposing the criminalization of poverty and really taking into account what can we do. And if you have ideas that come up throughout the night, even though it says street medic training, that is a thing. Underneath there's a chart that you can write on. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking in the beginning, but we will circle up at the end. And so if there are things that are missing from tonight, things that you want to continue to work on, or ideas that you come up with that are missing, please write them down and we'll return to them as we have our closing circle. In the intro, first of all, as I said before, if you don't want to be on camera, and you know that right now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you don't want to be on camera, do you mind right now raising your hand so Maria can see you? Okay, so Maria knows now who doesn't want to be on camera. And if people come in, if you can tell them things, because we're going to be moving around the room, that you need to let us know if you don't want to be on camera, and that when you speak, you have to speak into the microphone. As I've been told, because I hate mics, that it's also an accessibility issue for people who have hearing impairments. And I know that I can't hear very well myself. So tonight, basically, we have a lot of organizations here. We have 3 mics, and we're going to go around, and the organizations are going to tell us why they're here, and about what they do. And then after that, after every person goes, after every group goes, then we're gonna have time for you to go around to the table, and then we'll close with a circle. If that makes sense. Are there any questions about that process? Okay, so really briefly, no, I guess it's not necessary to briefly tell who's here, but I have right here, just so you know, an opening. There's a computer set up. Right now, there's a rule change that might be going into effect, and it's in the process of public comment. And that rule change is that any immigrant who takes food stamps or WIC or health insurance for kids will not be allowed to, could be rejected from their green card or from citizenship. That's a rule change they might be doing, but it's in the process of public comment. So right here we have a terminal set up, and you can sit here and write a comment and hit submit, and it goes straight to Homeland Security. And they're supposed to review every comment before they make a decision. So that's one of the stations that you can do, and it's right here, where I am.
The other thing that we have, I think I'll move that once people start walking around, but we are planning a street medic and first aid training in the new year. We don't have a date yet, but if you go over there, there is a sheet of paper that has more info on it. You can take it, and then you can either email us at Brattleboro Solidarity at gmail.com, which is on there, or you can just actually put your email, there's a pen, on that piece of paper, and we'll make sure that you keep up to date with when that's going to happen.
And the other thing is the thing about street medic training is that there have been other conversations about what to do instead of calling the police. Street medic training does give you some options about making informed decisions when we see something that's happening. Our instincts often are like, something's going wrong, let's call 911, which might be the right instinct, but I think the more information that we have, the more we're able to know that there might be other possibilities besides that being our knee-jerk reaction. So that's one reason for having street medic training.
Hello. Yeah. All right, great. My name is Emily Megas Russell. I'm not representing an organization per se here. I'm a psychotherapist in town, but I am representing an effort, a sort of grassroots organizing effort that is rolling, is getting started. And I spoke a little bit about it at the last meeting, but I have more information up here. Essentially, I became concerned, like many other people in town, about the quality of the dialogue around some of these issues and some of these conversations, namely around issues related to poverty and homelessness and addiction, and folks in our community who are struggling with these issues. And given that we're a really manageable size town, and there's a pretty manageable size homeless population here, that we can maybe do something about that as individual citizens and community members. So we have started a project we're calling the Community Organizing Effort, or COE. Many folks, individuals and organizations are involved. GroundWorks is a fiscal sponsor. And the idea is to center the voices of individuals who have lived experience with homelessness, poverty, addiction, economic inequality, and other issues that, asking for money that many of us see and talk about, but maybe don't have as deeply personal experience with or understand to the same level. And so the idea is to centralize the voices of those who have the lived experience as the experts, which is a different model than we tend to take in this culture, and to support folks who are willing to commit in meeting monthly with a stipend of $30 a month and a free lunch to sort of organize and to participate in a probably year-long process of meeting monthly with facilitation to look at what are the issues that folks are facing right now most pressing. I might have an idea of what the most pressing issues are, but that's not coming from lived experience right now with these issues. And looking at some of the low-hanging fruit in terms of positive solutions that we might be able to create, but also in terms of positive dialogue that we're, as a community, really struggling with. And so the idea is to centralize the voices of those with lived experience. We have 5 folks on board. We have space for 10. The first meeting of that core expert team, again, those are the folks with lived experience who are going to be considered the experts. The first monthly meeting is December 17th. I have all this information up here. December 17th at the co-op. So then there's another layer of folks, the facilitative organizers, who are going to, 2 facilitative organizers are going to facilitate each month. So we also have a very exciting opportunity, which is a free facilitation skills training that Chad Simmons and Emily Kornheiser are going to lead. There's information about that up here. That's December 3rd at the co-op. And so if you don't identify as somebody with lived experience with these issues, but you want to maybe participate as a facilitator, that's one option. If you have other resources, like maybe you're a hairstylist and you really want to help people get that need met, or maybe you have, other resources that you want to sort of that core group to know is available, then that's another layer, the outer circle of participation. So it's a little bit esoteric. I can answer more specific questions as you come around. I will say to end that the co-op has agreed. They have a lot of folks who are no trespass. That's something that we know, and I've been meeting with them about, and they are on board with supporting anybody who wants to participate in that core expert team to participate, regardless of whether they have a no trespass order or not.
My name is Peter Rassin, and I'm here to represent Pathways Vermont. We are an organization throughout the state with sort of a lot of different branches that we sort of veer into. Our overall goal for Pathways Vermont is to help people, transform their lives, whether it's from mental illness, substance abuse, whatever, to, have their own self-directed recovery that, has supports. Just going briefly, a couple of our programs. We have our Housing First program, which is here in Brattleboro and Windham County. Housing First is a housing evidence-based practice that we believe everybody has a basic right to a shelter. So we do not have any prerequisites for putting people in housing. We put people in and get shelter and allow them to take a breath to sort of see what life is and, make plans to go from there. Plans they make, not plans that we make, but plans they make. It's evidence-based. We've had in the state of Vermont 85% success rate or retention rate. So that means that throughout the last year, 85% of our clients remained housed the entire year. In our Housing First program, over 90% of our clientele last year were in the community. That wasn't locked away in the criminal justice system, that wasn't locked away in a psych hospital, that was here amongst us as our peers. We have our supportive services for veteran families program, which is a rapid rehousing program for veterans. It's very quick. We hear about a vet that needs some help. We come in, we provide supports, get them into permanent housing, and go from there. One really exciting thing that's sort of happened in the last couple of years is our support line. I don't know if you've heard VPR or seen the ads anywhere, but it's a support line that's a warm line. So from the hours of 3 p.m. to 6 a.m., any Vermonter can call. You are having a bad time because it's only sunny for one day out of 13 around here recently. Call and you can talk and you can get heard and you can be treated with respect and dignity. And it's not a time thing. You can call and talk for 6 hours if that is what you need to do. So that's really exciting. I have more information about that. And also we have Soteria House, which is up in the Burlington area. So our Soteria House, it is funded by the Department of Mental Health, but is for people experiencing their sort of first psychiatric break in life. So instead of just being potentially ushered into the correction system or labeled in the Department of Mental Health system, you can go to this house that is a peer support run and, be able to work through your things without any, thing pushed down your throat. But yeah, we have a couple more programs that we offer, but feel free to come and talk to me if you want.
I'm Sherry, I'm one of the advocates of the Women's Freedom Center, and for those who aren't as familiar, we are formerly the Women's Crisis Center. We're the domestic and sexual violence resource organization for Wyndham and Southern Windsor counties, and we've been doing this work in this community now for about 44 years. And we always want to make sure people know that even though we have held on to our original grassroots name, the Women's Freedom Center is committed to supporting all survivors of domestic and sexual violence, all genders, all different intimate partner experiences. And some of the main supports that we offer are a 24-hour confidential crisis hotline answered by staff. We have 3 different confidentially located shelters where primarily women and women and kids can stay who are fleeing domestic violence. We do probably the most critical support that we offer is individual safety planning for anyone who's fleeing domestic violence. We're part of the automatic protocol at the emergency room. Anytime there's been a sexual assault or rape, an advocate responds within 30 minutes. And then we do all kinds of systems advocacy to help survivors, including survivors within sort of economic systems in our culture, legal systems, law enforcement, you name it. And then community outreach and education. So we really appreciate the work of Brattleboro Solidarity and having us be here. Last year, just to give you a snapshot in our own community, we answered 1,700 hotline calls on our crisis call line. 1,205 people who experienced domestic or sexual violence received safety planning, legal consultations, advocacy in court. The list goes on. So there's a lot of need, really 24/7, I would say. And we've had lots and lots of community members reach out to us to ask how they can help. So again, tonight is a really fruitful conversation, I think, to bring people into the work. And then obviously, if we had more time, there's a whole component to sort of gender and poverty that we don't have time for tonight. The part that really touches on the work of the Women's Freedom Center is adding to that, the experience anybody might have facing poverty. And then if you add domestic or sexual violence to that picture, it's astronomical, right? We know that almost all batterers in domestic violence relationships use financial control and abuse as part of their tactics. And so the impact for that, it can either push, primarily women, but any survivor, it can either push them into or further into a cycle of poverty. And again, that radiates out into the work of all the different organizations here. And so, in the short term, that can make it much harder to flee a situation, and it can have people feel like they're really stuck in that situation. And long term, it can really wreak havoc across the board on the survivors' finances, their work history, their rental history, their credit history, etc. So there's a lot of work that, when we really get down to the kind of systems advocacy that we try to do, we realize that survivors of domestic and sexual violence are getting sort of a full dose of what's challenging in our culture, right? Because they have somebody specifically looking to keep them locked in poverty. So we have been looking at the Women's Freedom Center at some of the different women. We've never done this work alone. We appreciate our generous community, but we're looking at really concrete steps to bring people not specifically into the direct crisis work, but there are countless other ways that we can have folks support the day-to-day work that we do in our shelters and kind of across the board. So I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Aislinn here.
So as Sharon mentioned, the Women's Freedom Center, we really are grassroots and we're small and local, so we really do need a lot of support from the community for this work. So advocates are trained to do the direct service work, answering our hotline and things like that. But we do have some opportunities in the shelter for things like food stocking and cleaning. We really need the community to get involved in those ways. We haven't always had the capacity to have volunteers, but we're just kind of starting to really open up that program in a new way, and we're calling it Movement Builders. So we have a Facebook group right now, and there are a few ways you can plug in online, or you can call our office site for information here, and you can sign up on this list right here. So yeah, if you're interested in any of that, please come talk to us, because it would just be wonderful to have more people connected.
Hi, I'm Mariana Kendrick with GroundWorks Collaborative, and also have other staff who are here who can help chat with folks. We are the agency that came together from the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center and Morningside Shelter to become GroundWorks, and so the work that we do is to run shelters, a food pantry, and supportive services in the greater Brattleboro area. And so we run a food pantry that's open 3.5 days a week that serves over 1,000 people a month. We also provide supportive services and case management to many individuals that are living in our community, including partnering with Wyndham Windsor for the Great River Terrace project on Putney Road. We operate 2 emergency shelters. One is the seasonal overflow shelter, which is located at the Winston Crowdy campus for a second year. And then we also run a year-round shelter located in kind of smack dab in the middle of the Morningside condo complex, and we have an additional 30 beds as well as a 2-bedroom transitional apartment there. And so the involvement from community is what allows us to open doors and to operate on a daily basis through volunteer support and advocacy and support for clients in terms of supplies, folks that are moving into new apartments, donations, things of the like. And so our goal is to connect with folks. We're happy to share more about the work that we do and to talk about both volunteer opportunities that we have as well as job openings that we have currently. And whatever we can share with folks to help engage with the folks that we serve in the community, we're really excited to do.
We're good to go. My name is Don Kierden. I am a person in recovery, and I'm here representing Turning Point in Windham County, which is one of 12 state-funded recovery centers. And what's a recovery center, you say? Big part of our mission is to be a safe and welcoming environment for people in recovery and their families. Well, what's recovery? Hold on a second. What am I in recovery from? I'm in recovery from alcohol use disorder, which is what the doctor word for what we used to call alcoholism, but alcoholism sounds too much like a religion to me, so I go with the doctor words. So what we are is part of a movement. It started in the 90s. We've kind of been looking at this addiction issue since about the Chang Dynasty. And things have changed since then. So there's a fair amount of effort that goes into prevention, which is an evidence-based practice that actually works. Early intervention, talking to kids at high schools, talking to kids at elementary school, it starts earlier and earlier and earlier. That actually works. It dissuades a lot of them from getting started. There's a bunch of us that doesn't take with. And so there's a thin slot in your life that about 10% of us encounter, and that's called treatment. And that's about a $35 billion a year industry in the United States. You're all familiar with all the the mythology and the glamour and the 28-day rehab, all that sort of stuff. That's those sorts of things, and it's it's a pretty effective tool for getting people started. The moment that you make the decision that you want to try to live a different way in our world is the day that you become part of the recovery movement. You have started your recovery. I've been fortunate. I've been able to remain abstinent from the things that caused me misery for over 25 years. And I'm not necessarily the exception. There are about 23 million people in recovery in the United States. And bunches of us, geezers like me who started with those 12-step programs where we don't have last names, are coming out of the shadows to say, hey, my name's Don, I'm a person in recovery, and my life is pretty damn dull. And I invite you to have one just like it. Because prior to recovery, my life was very interesting. Not that I'm not having a good time. So that's who we are. It's kind of the overview of the gigantic thing that I could go on for hours and hours about, but you're starting to glaze already, so I'm just going to move it along. What I'm doing here tonight is I'm distributing a miracle drug that's going to grow hair. No, it's not. It saves lives. It's called Narcan. It's the trade name for a drug called naloxone, which is an opiate blocker. And the reason I'm here passing that out is because 90 some odd people a day are dying from opiate overdoses in the United States every day. It's huge. In the town of Brattleboro, we have 28 to 30 reported overdoses in the course of every month. Fortunately, most of those survive. But it's because of interventions like this. In my time in recovery, I've seen heroin come back 3 times. The first 2 times, everybody pretty much died, or they ended up in some twilight existence of misery. This time, it's much more humane. We have this tool, and we have medication-assisted treatment, which is code words for people that use methadone and Suboxone and Vivitrol and some other devices that ease the pain of opiate withdrawal. It's a very complicated set of biochemistry that I'm not going to bore you with. But the good news is, you can put this stuff in your pocket and take it with you, and if you see someone having an overdose, you can save their life. It's a pretty simple process. I'm not going to describe it here. I'd rather you come to the table and we'll sit and have a little chat, and we'll fill out some ridiculous paperwork, which I will ease the burden of, because I hand this stuff out all the time. This is more fun than Halloween. It's like you don't even have to say trick or treat, and I will hook you up. I'm also, as a member of, I'm the program coordinator for the Turning Point. We're right down on Elm Street, corner of Elm and Flat, across from the kind of catty corner from the New England Youth Theater. We're in there Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and hoping to expand those hours sometime soon, but we're always surfing for volunteers. We run on volunteers. And you don't have to have the lived experience of having been an addict yourself. All you need to have is the experience of having a loved one. And some of our best volunteers have been the people that don't necessarily have the disorder. So that's the pitch for the volunteers. We're also good at answering all kinds of questions. We are a resource. We work with 36 some odd entities in Windham County that have skin in the recovery game in some way, shape, or form, whether they're getting roofs over their heads or helping them in crisis or getting them fed or clothed or back into the workforce. All those sorts of things that you come up against, because you know what? When we're active in our disease, we're not very popular. And so places like employers and families and housing entities kind of put us out. So we help get you put back in, or if you know someone who needs to help getting put back in. And we do that all day long, Monday to Friday. So swing by here if you want to pick one of these up and put it in your pocket. It's anybody can operate it. It's all you need is 2 fingers and a thumb, and it's really just a nasal spray and some instructions about how to use it and what you need to do while you're doing that. And that's my story.
Okay, I am Becca, and I am here from the Brattleboro Community Justice Center. So we see folks who are a part of the justice system in all sorts of capacities, whether that is pre-charge, which is somebody who is going through the justice system for the first time, all the way through re-entry, so somebody who has gone to prison and are returning back to our community. So we see folks all along, and then we also see quite a few community members. And so it's really important for us to honor tonight that there are so many of our volunteers already here in the audience, and that is what really allows us to facilitate programs and facilitate intentional and accountable community building. So thank you to our volunteers, and also people who are not volunteers. Seek them out to hear their lived experiences in volunteering for the Justice Center. So we have a few different opportunities for engagement. We have one program called the Restorative Justice Panel Program, and folks can be referred to the Restorative Justice Panel Program through the court system. And so what happens is that allows the participant to take some accountability for what has happened in the community. And they will then be sentenced to a restorative justice panel, which meets for 4 months, once a month, for about 45 minutes. And it really, these panels are all about addressing harm and impact within the community. And so that is very much restorative justice, and that we're thinking about who is harmed, who is impacted, who has been affected, what are community needs, what are your needs, what are needs to make amends, and what can we do to prevent this from happening in the future. So really thinking about harm and impact is how we frame kind of restorative practices. We also have a COSA program, and COSAs happen all across the state and stand for Circles of Support and Accountability, and they are for folks who are coming back to the community after serving a sentence. And so COSAs meet once a week for a year or longer, and it really is just about intentional community building and making sure people have a face in the community, and that they're getting their paperwork in, and that they're working with Pathways, or that they are working with RISE to make sure that they're meeting all of their needs, that they're going to meetings that they might be required to attend to as a part of their probation or parole. And it really is just about building intentional communities, and that welcoming people back is a really important piece. We also do quite a bit of restorative justice practices in the school system, which is, again, early intervention is super important, so doing a lot of trainings with teachers, as well as running restorative justice circles and circle processes in various schools throughout southern Vermont, which is very exciting. So please come by and learn more about our volunteer opportunities, either with COSA or the REP panels, and we would love for all of you to be here. And also, just another plug while I have the mic, is that if you traveled either from Bennington or like Route 9 West, or if you came down from Bellows Falls or Putney, we do have other justice centers. There's one in Bennington, there's one in Greater Falls. So if this was quite a drive for you, there are justice centers everywhere, and we are always in need of folks to continue building community.
Thanks. My name is Chris Hart. I'm with the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships. We are the traditional federal public housing in Brattleboro. We have 4 communities left, 2 for families and 2 for the elderly and non-elderly disabled. Rent is figured on your adjusted gross income, so it's 30% of that. That means that we can have a family of 5 living in an apartment, and they would be paying less, potentially, than somebody in a 1-bedroom apartment, because it's income-based. It's not based on the size of the apartment. We also have 2 project-based programs. These are all different voucher programs. They're fairly complex. One is at Red Clover Commons, which is the new building next to Walgreens, and the other is the Richards Building in West Brattleboro. We have 150 traditional Section 8 vouchers, which are in use throughout the community with private and nonprofit landlords. We have 3 programs working, grant programs working with supportive services. GroundWorks is a big part of these, to house the homeless and people that are hard to house. Right now, we're engaged at looking at a program to work with the community on housing retention. It's one thing to look at homelessness, and I certainly think that's really important, but I think we're all getting more and more aware of the fact that what we might try to do is help people before they get homeless. So we're looking at trying to develop a program with the nonprofits and actually with the private landlords to enable us to get in and work with folks when they start having a housing issue with their landlord and maybe forestalling an eviction. Right now is a very exciting time and a daunting time for a federal housing program. You can guess why it's daunting. It's exciting because we are looking at a very innovative and significant change in our programming, which would actually get us out from under the 900 pages of HUD rules that we have to operate under that have absolutely no relevance to Brattleboro. And we would be able to build our own programs, both housing and supportive services, working with the community and our residents to do that. And that's why I'm here, because we've asked Wakala to help us and be on the Community Advisory Committee for that. It's a very exciting program. We really hope that we will be one of the lucky housing authorities chosen for it. I personally think that Brattleboro is a perfect community to do this in because there's so much civic engagement. I think that we could really do some really, really great things with our public housing assets, which are estimated at about $13 million when we look at all of our buildings. So that's it. Our mission is to house folks that have barriers to housing, and that barrier can be just that they're poor. We take people that don't have money. We take people that don't have landlord references. We take people that have bad landlord references. We take people with high credit scores, bad rent history, no credit, and with some pretty shoddy landlord references, but we know who the landlords are, so that makes a difference. So I have some material here. I'm happy to hand it out. I will say in all honesty that we do have long waiting lists, which is unfortunate. And I just want to follow up. You said something about a public comment. I was reading yesterday that they're now flirting with some rules that would make anybody that is what they're calling getting public care, and that includes housing, that they would not, and especially if you're an immigrant, you would not be eligible for that. So it's a way to make us not take immigrants into public housing, which is really outstanding, just outrageous in my opinion. Is there anybody from the press here? I should ask. Oops. So that's it. That's who we are. I'm happy to talk to anybody and tell you more about what we're doing. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Christine Lynn. I'm the Director of Youth Development at Youth Services. Youth Services has 4 distinct programs and or departments, and within those 4 we have 18 different programs. The primary focus is restorative justice, clinical services for youth and families with mental health or substance use disorders. We have a mentoring and workforce development program that's centered around screen printing business.
Sorry, it's a requirement.
Mentoring and workforce development that's centered around screen printing business that's entirely youth-led. And then the department that I run is the youth development programs. So in my department, we work with youth who are experiencing homelessness, have run away, or are at risk for either. We have 2 youth shelters, one in Brattleboro and one in Bellows Falls, and provide case management and support services for the youth in our shelters and for youth who are in need of housing until there's an opening either in our shelter or in one of our community partners' housing resources. We also provide case management for youth who are in or aged out of foster care, and host homes, which are 21-day emergency shelter stays for youth under age 18 who need a break from their families for whatever reason, and the goal there is reunification with their families. We have a lot of different needs. One of the reasons that I think it's important we're involved in this conversation is that state and federal funders and resources are not enough to solve or even really touch the problems that the most disconnected and disadvantaged members of our community face. And so we need help. Homelessness to me is really not just about community partners stepping in and taking care of it. We need the community's support at all levels. So one of the primary asks that we have is around host homes. We have 1 host home, and we could probably fill it 365 days out of the year and still not have enough nights. We also have youth aging out of foster care into homelessness in our community, which if there's not permanency at that point, youth are then, I think it's 25% of those youth then go on to experience multiple episodes of homelessness and chronic homelessness. So having a permanent connection at that point is a critical moment for lifelong well-being. And those sorts of things are also how we address the capacity issues and the resource scarcity, because if we can cut it off down here before it becomes chronic homelessness, then we don't have to expend the already scarce resources to support those people later in life. So we have sign-up sheets here. We're starting a quarterly volunteer training that'll run Emily Kornheiser is the Director of Workforce Development and set it up, and I cannot remember the scheduling. It's something like the first Monday of the quarter, starting at 6 this January, and then 9 the second, I don't know. You can get on our mailing list and we'll get you the information on that. And then I just also want to add that I also have lived experience. I aged out of foster care and aged out of foster care into homelessness, and so I think it's important just to recognize them when we have those experiences. So thank you, and feel free to come up and ask questions. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think we're really glad that Youth Services is here tonight, because one of the feedbacks we got from last time is that there wasn't much conversation about youth in this community and what's happening with homelessness and youth, so we're glad you're here. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
So I guess what we'll do is let people move around, and I think that Dawn has the most time sensitive, because you want about 5 people at a time, right? Would that be your limit? What do you think?
It varies. I could probably, if everyone's patient, I can do them one at a time. And
Oh, one at a time is better for you?
And I can move them quicker.
Okay. So Dawn, and so that's like 5 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Dawn's wish. And so we'll give you like indicators of time maybe in 10-minute intervals, if that's interesting. What are y'all thinking? No? Yeah. 10? Okay.
Yeah, I think so, and I think, remember that this is right here, right?
Yeah, the
code.
code.
If you want to do that. I'm going to move that street medic sign, but you can write your email if you want. Talk with each other.
The other thing you can do is, if you feel so inclined, is move chairs, and perhaps move the chairs in front of different tables, and so you don't have to stand at the tables. And so the chairs, then that'll have room for that easel at a different place. So feel free to move your chairs about as well, and maybe leave your chairs in a stationary place and move to another chair that's open. And if you have questions or any thoughts, we're gonna set up this easel somewhere to add to the conversation, and then we'll probably circle up in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, maybe like somewhere between like half hour, 45 minutes. We'll kind of like feel it out.
All right. Thank you. The library, our gracious hosts. We really appreciate the library staff that support us. Star, who champions us. And they're having on December 5th at 7 p.m. the Writing the Life of Frederick Douglass. Yale historian David White, author of a new biography, will tell a story. Frederick Douglass, so y'all should come out for that. It's great, it's not even Black History Month. Please, man. Doing big things. Not required. Also, just another plug for community meals. Showing up at a community meal is just a way to make a great connection. And so all of us, that's a simple thing that we can do, and all of us should do that when we have time. And here's a list of free community meals in town. Some of them are cooked by really professional chefs, though, and they're really good. I haven't heard a bad thing about any of the community meals in town. Also, I heard, kind of through the grapevine, I was eavesdropping, that Don ran out of Narcan, and I'm sure y'all know how to find him at Turning Point. Should they call first?
Nope.
You do not have to call first. So I don't know if people have any final comments, any ideas they want to share overall. I don't know if we should go around, or what do you have thoughts, Anna?
Process.
Oh, no, I think we just want to make sure that we open it up to the floor if anyone else would like to say something. Maybe it could be anything, something about their experience tonight or ideas that you have, because it's going to take all of us. And yeah, if anyone wants to say anything. Yeah. And I'm going to give you the mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, my name is Damon Peer. One of the suggestions I put on the piece of paper for everyone is to push legislation, there we go, from our elected officials, because it's awesome that we have these wonderful programs, but the only way we're going to address the root of the problem is if we have our politicians and our local officials push for proper legislation to not criminalize people that have a problem. So if you're an addict, most addicts aren't like waking up going, I want to be addicted to this drug. That just doesn't happen. What happens is someone's traumatized, maybe raped, or most of the time with opiates, it's a car crash or some sort of accident that gets them hooked on opiates. Because doctors will get you hooked on drugs like they're pill pushers. So what we need to do is we need to legalize tax and regulate the drugs, not just throw out crocodile or cocaine or whatever, but to regulate the drugs so that you're not giving someone laced marijuana or laced heroin. In France, what they do is they'll have safe houses, essentially, where you can go in like a needle exchange, and you go in like this bathroom and have an intercom system. So what they do is they have all their staff is trained in medical, like an EMT essentially. And every few seconds, that EMT will push a button and say, are you okay, do you need any help? If you do not respond in a certain amount of time, that person is coming in to make sure you are okay and you're not dead. Here in America, what we do is we say, oh no, screw that person. They're just a piece of problem. They're a problem, and we need to like not address the situation at all. So what we also need to do is we need to get a living wage, and we need to push a national jobs program. Well, those two things will do is one, a living wage will make it so that you're not going into poverty. And right now what we have is a federal minimum wage that is $7.25 an hour. For those of you who do not know what that is like, I worked at GameStop for about 9 months. $7.25 as a student, that is not enough to pay for a 1-bedroom apartment here in Brattleboro or anywhere in the country. federal minimum wage can only support 12 counties, not 12 states, 12 counties in the United States. You can only afford to live on a minimum wage, federal minimum wage, in 12 counties in the richest country in the world. That is what is called a failed system. That is a system that does not care about homelessness, which has about 40,000 homeless vets and about almost 500,000 homeless people. That was from 2 years ago. That number has almost doubled since then. So those are my 2 suggestions, and my email is on there as well. So if you want to get in contact with me, feel free to. And that's everything.
Thank you so much. Other people? Anyone that, organizations too, feel free to say something. Yes.
I just want to let folks know that the library graciously made copies of the core expert meeting and the facilitation skills training flyer if you want to take one.
Any other final thoughts? Closing words?
I have a question. What are you going to do next?
That's what we want ideas for, but no one's giving any. To be honest, this idea, it did come from the last conversation we had. And so, yeah, I have no idea what the next step would be. I think that it depends on what people are interested in and what is their movement behind. I mean, the reality is that it's cold outside now, and that the overflow shelter only holds so many people, and that there are people that are really in need, and that we see them every day, and that they are part of our community. And so, how do we build bridges to help people? And so, that's how we have to decide what to do next. You can come back and talk about, at Diversity Day, you can talk about the legislation you were preparing. Anyone else?
I feel like I'm totally that teacher that just waits and waits. Because eventually someone says something. See, I feel it. I always tell my students, I am happy to stand here all day.
I just want to say, as a public school teacher, it's really great to see all this work happening and the connections being made in the same room. Too often, I hear stories of my students and their families reaching out for public assistance and being treated not like humans. And so it's really great to see the work that's happening in Brattleboro, and to know that the connections among housing and education and just supporting young people in general is, I think, what's going to start changing. And I know that young people are starting to really question what's happening in this world, and they're seeing that all of these systems that are supposed to create the American dream are failing all around or have never existed. And so I think the more support that we can give young people in this time, meaning making sure that their housing needs are met, is going to be really important as they continue to live in our communities.
Anyone else want to say anything as we're closing? We're doing a nice long stare. All right. Well, we want to thank everyone that came tonight. So all of you, thank you so much to all of the organizations that came and shared and brought all your things with you. You're really vital to the community. So, and yeah, somehow we'll keep the conversation going. We'll figure that out, whether that's in small groups with other people or in big groups. We'll figure it out.
Also, you'll hear from us about street medic training in January. You'll get email about that. Yes. And the other thing to think about is, what do you want to do? I mean, I think that all of us make a commitment. Right now, I feel like someone came up to me and said, I feel open, I'm really engaged at this moment. But when I step out it becomes harder to see, right? Because we're all really busy. We have lives, we have children, we have. So how can we stay connected to the spirit of making connections to other humans outside of the library today? And so I feel like God gave us one resource by handing us Narcan, and that there are other commitments that we can make, but to really be realistic about what those commitments look like. And I feel like sometimes they look like talking to people differently than you had before, or even thinking about what you think in a different way. Even today, I was talking to someone because I feel like it's amazing how I've been programmed. And sometimes I find myself feeling emotions around things that I don't even believe, like upset or sad or angry. And I'm like, I don't even agree with that. Like, why do I have this feeling? And I have to keep asking myself, what have I been taught? Like, why am I scared? Like, I have no reason to be scared. Like, intellectually, I'm not scared of this other person. But I've been taught that I should be, or that I shouldn't talk to them, or whatever it is, but all those things matter. And so maybe that's our commitment, is to change the way we think, and to constantly think about what we're thinking. Because we've all been socialized in this world that's against the poor, that's against people of color, that's against women, and that list goes on, but we have to keep going. So I'm hoping that that's a commitment we can all make, and that I have to get up and make every day to myself. And I feel like I'm lucky because I have two little reminders that repeat what I say in my household, and those are very good reminders. Not everyone has those, so you have to set that up for yourself. So like, who's gonna remind you when you have those thoughts? We have to think about that. Like, who's gonna be there? Because we don't all have little parents in our household. Thank you so much.
Thank you.